in this lesson, we'll build some geometry to fill in the underside of our mech. So we want to have kind of the hip joint here, and then we want to have some geometry to kind of fill this in. So let's start with just a polygon sphere. Let's bring it up into position. Let's increase our radius. And we can kind of catch a little bit of it from the side here. And so you can kind of see it right in here. So we'll kind of drop that in. And so I think something like that will be good, kind of fill things out. Let's kind of move it forward a little bit. All right, let's also create some geometry underneath, and we can do that just by creating a piece of a cube shape. Let's bring that up, and let's increase our values here. You can kind of see it from the side here. Let's give ourselves some subdivisions in the depth. Okay, and then we can just begin to add a little bit of shape to this. And so from the side, I'm just going to grab these points and start to kind of pull these down a little bit. Oops. Until it's sort of, we want it to be kind of penetrating up at the top. And then it's going to penetrate into the sphere, which is fine. So let's take a look at that and see where we are. So I think that looks pretty good. I probably want to make it, I don't want to make it too wide. I think that's probably going to work pretty well. I'll take this front part and kind of narrow it down a little bit. And then let's add some subdivisions here using our Insert Edge Loop tool. So when we smooth it, it'll kind of be the shape that we want. So we'll kind of bring some edges right in there. Okay, so something like that. And we actually can probably make it a little bit wider up here. Maybe something more like that. I'll bring this sphere down just a hair. All right, so starting to fill those gaps in a little bit more. We also want to have a socket for the hip. You can kind of catch it a little bit right there. Let's use a cylinder for that. So bring in a cylinder. Oops. And bring it up into position. I'll just kind of scale it this time. And we can kind of rotate it into kind of the right angle. And we can have it penetrate into the sphere. So maybe something like that. We'll bring our sphere up a little bit more. Let's take our front part of this and we'll kind of taper it down a little. And then let's add an opening. So we'll do the opening just kind of like we did with the arm. Go to Edit Mesh, Extrude. Extrude this in. G to repeat. And then we'll push that in. It's okay if it penetrates in a little bit. All right, and we can move this a little so it's not, so we can have it kind of stick off of the sphere a little bit more. Something like that, and then we can take this and, you know, make that whole thing maybe a little bit wider. And we'll pull this out a little bit. And that creates kind of the hip. So just kind of closing in those gaps. If we're going to be smoothing it, we can add those edge loops in there. to tighten things up. And that one doesn't work because of the triangles, so that's okay. Push it back into the sphere a little bit more. And now with any of these other things, you know, we've been building one on each side. We can mirror this just by grouping it, which will send the pivot to the middle, Control D to duplicate, and then I'm just going to scale it across a particular axis by hitting -1 in the scale, and that'll flip it around. Then we'll freeze those transformations. You can see now we have 2 copies of that. We can do the same thing here if we select all of these. Select all the pipes. Hit Control G to group those together. Control D to duplicate. -1 in the scale. Let's do the same thing here. Now this one is already, because we duplicated those faces, it's already got the pivot at the origin, so we'll just duplicate it and send it over. So that way we can send our detail from one side to the other side. All right, so once we've got our geometry filled in the bottom, it doesn't have to be exact, we just want to kind of fill those gaps in so it looks like there's a little bit more going on underneath there. If you want to get exact and make some machinery going on under there, you can do that too. But let's start now by building the upper leg. So we'll kind of do the same thing we did with the arm, kind of come down from the hip and extend down to the foot. So go ahead and do that next.